Hi, I'm Eric, one of the co-founders here at the Tree of New America. One of the questions we're often asked is, what is the Tree of New America? Well, in order to answer that, we've got to ask another question. What is an immigrant? Every immigrant has a story. Some are happy, some are sad, some are triumphant and inspiring. The stories that we tell are special and with purpose and live here at the Tree of New America. Our journey begins in Long Beach, California. There I met up with retired Air Force veteran Frank Rubin at the VA hospital. Frank has spent more than 30 years both as an employee and now as a retired volunteer at the VA in service of his fellow veterans. After a short tour of the facility, Frank introduced us to his father.
My dad was young, and he was in the concentration camp, and they were not feeding him, but you could tell he was getting anorexic there. Second one, when he was a POW in Korea returning on a stretcher, an exchange prisoner of war. And the third one is where he's in his uniform, sharply dressed. And then the fourth one is when President Bush Jr. is putting the Medal of Honor on my dad.
After this surprising reveal, Frank then invited us into the comfort of his home, where he then told us his father's amazing immigrant story.
So you got to be sure you're not nervous. Do a silly dance. Do a there you go. All right, go.
He's funny.
Okay. I'm sitting down with Frank Rubin. How you doing, Frank?
Good, Eric. How are you doing?
Good. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to start off with a little bit different question than I'd normally be doing here. So simply, I'm going to ask you, Frank, what is an immigrant?
Immigrant, I would think, would be my father.
Frank's father, Tibor, was born in 1929 in a Jewish village in Hungary. As a young teenager, the Nazi scourge swept its way through Europe, and Tibor's parents tried to send him to safety in neutral Switzerland. Sadly, he was caught and sent to Munchausen concentration camp in Austria. Tibor made it out alive. After 2 years of surviving, Tibor, now 16, was liberated by American GIs. 3 years later, and now a young man, Tibor made his way to America. He settled in the Jewish neighborhood of Yorkville, New York, where he worked as a shoemaker's apprentice. In 1949, at age 20, Tibor then decided he wanted to give back to America. While attempting to enlist in the U.S. Army, he failed to meet the basic English language requirements. Tibor refused to give up. Later, with the help of two friends who had successfully enlisted previously, he tried again, and this time he passed. He was now an American GI. In 1950, while stationed in Okinawa, war broke out on the Korean Peninsula, and Private First Class Rubin now found himself fighting for his new country. During this life and death period, Private Rubin was subjected to unrelenting anti-Semitism from his platoon sergeant. According to numerous affidavits submitted by nearly a dozen men who served with Tibor, this anti-Semitic sergeant consistently volunteered Rubin for the most dangerous patrols and missions. According to the testimonies of his comrades, Private Rubin single-handedly defended a hill for 24 hours against wave after wave of enemy soldiers. For this and other acts of bravery, Private Rubin was recommended 4 times for the Medal of Honor by 2 of his commanding officers. Unfortunately, both commanders were killed in action shortly afterwards, but not before ordering Rubin's platoon sergeant to begin the necessary paperwork recommending Rubin for the Medal of Honor. Some of Rubin's comrades were present and witnessed the order being issued, and all were convinced that the aforementioned sergeant deliberately ignored both officers' orders. Towards the end of July 1950, overwhelming numbers of communist Chinese soldiers crossed the border into Korea, attacking the unprepared American troops who were now trapped. Most of Tibor's regiment had been killed or captured. Tibor, who was severely wounded, was also captured and spent the next 30 months in a prisoner of war camp. Faced with constant hunger, filth, and disease, most of the GIs simply gave up. No one wanted to help anyone. Everybody was for himself, wrote a former POW. The exception to that rule was Tibor. Almost every evening, he would sneak out of the prison camp to steal food from the Chinese and North Korean supply depots, knowing that he would be shot if caught. Being a devoutly religious Jew, helping his fellow men became the most important thing to him. He did many good deeds, which he told us were mitzvahs in the Jewish tradition. The survivors of the prisoner of war camp credited Tibor with keeping them alive and saving at least 40 American lives. It was also noted that Tibor refused his captors' repeated offers of repatriation to Hungary. He stated, "America is my country now." In 1953, the war in Korea ended, and after negotiations were completed, Tibor was released and he was sent home. Now recovered from his ordeal, Rubin married and started a family. As he got on with his American life, he continued service to his country by volunteering most of his time at the local VA. 40 years later, in 1993, a study was commissioned by the United States Army to investigate discrimination in the awarding of military medals. The ensuing investigation showed that Private Rubin had been the subject of discrimination due to his religion and should have received the Medal of Honor much earlier. In 2005, President George W. Bush presented the Medal of Honor to Tibor Rubin in a ceremony at the White House for his actions in 1950 during the Korean War. This was the story of an immigrant named Tibor Rubin, the only Holocaust survivor ever to receive a Medal of Honor.
An immigrant is somebody who comes to our country in America and wants to become a citizen, learns the language, learns education about America, and that's what American immigrant is. Not American immigrant, an immigrant. They come to another country and they want to learn the language. They want to do something. Most people who come to this country are not even part of that anymore.
Corporal Rubin's gallant actions in close contact with the enemy and unyielding courage and bravery while a prisoner of war are in the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Army.
To get a medal like that, a guy who wasn't born here, a guy who wasn't a citizen, this is a miracle. My sergeant, he's the one who made a hero out of me. I didn't even know what is a Medal of Honor. I don't want to be a hero, especially, maybe a lot of them died to be a hero.
From a humble immigrant to an American hero. As I reflect upon Tibor's story, I can't help but wonder what the Tree of New America will become as we set out to tell more immigrant stories. We appreciate you following us here at the Tree of New America, and we look forward to seeing you soon as our journey continues.
So let me ask you two, what is an immigrant? Are you an immigrant?
Yes, I'm an immigrant.
So let me ask you one last question. What is an immigrant?
I am an immigrant.